Photos subscribers. Today I'm going to be telling you about time or shutter priority. We talked a little bit about the modes in a different video, but your camera wheel, your priority or programmed operation, what they call modes. For most camera models, manufacturers, they call them modes. Nikon, Canon, Sony, Panasonic. I guess almost all of it. It's a pretty universal term, mode. But today we want to talk about that tiny little letter right up there. Canon puts it on this mode wheel here as TV. So what they're talking about is they're calling it time value. And the one part of time that the camera controls or you control when you shoot on manual is the length of time. In other words, time, how long your shutter stays open so that the sensor can see and receive the light that's coming down your lens. So, time value. When you have your camera set on TV, it's allowing you to set how long your shutter stays open so that the sensor can see and receive that light. Which, let's call that the sensor is the artificial film. I like that, artificial. Okay. So your camera set on TV, or I guess Nikon may just have T there. I don't know. Maybe S for shutter. The point is that the one thing you're going to be controlling on the LCD screen is, and here it's the finger wheel up near the shutter release for the Canon that I'm shooting on. You're going to be controlling setting the shutter speed length. Is it 1/250th of a second? Is it 1/100th of a second? Or 1/50th of a second? Now, there's a lot of confusion as to how fast you should shoot, that sort of stuff. A lot of different people are asking questions, why are my pictures blurry? Or, you know, I was shooting at this shutter speed. I didn't think it would be blurry. I haven't had blurry shots like that before. A lot of things can affect your blurry photographs only discussing the shutter speed. It can be the subject moving. It can be not just you're moving when the camera's in your hand. When it's cold out here, I'm just cold-natured anyway recently. But you don't want to shake when you're taking a picture. You want to be as still as you can. Squeeze your shutter release very slowly. I don't know if any of y'all have taken a lemon and cut it in half and then squeeze the juice out, or an orange. You want to do that slowly and try and compress like, I don't know if any of y'all have used a tabletop vise or seen a pneumatic compressor where it's the power of air in the cylinder that's pushing something closed. You want to do it slow and methodical, just increase stronger and stronger and squeeze harder and harder. A little bit the same way. It won't take as much strength as squeezing a lemon or an orange, but you're going to want to bring your camera, your finger, your camera finger. You're going to want to bring your finger down on your shutter release and gently bring it down halfway, let your camera focus, and then press all the way in until your shutter release doesn't go any further and your camera actuates. Okay, so that's going to avoid any kind of quick jerk pressure like that, okay? No, I didn't call you a jerk. I didn't call me a jerk either. But it's going to avoid any jerking when you're pulling the button backwards to release your shutter, okay? That's going to avoid that kind of shake and blurry shot in capturing that photograph. But then the other side is, if your shutter speed is too slow, you take that shutter, that that photograph, release the shutter, and then you move before the shutter closes back over your sensor. That's gonna produce a type of blur. I'm gonna save that. Remind me, okay? Y'all watching and subscribers, if you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe. I have a lot of things that I've done and I've worked on, and I want to do some more work on. One of those things is creating motion blur. Okay, so that means you're gonna have to have some leeway in learning and knowledge about the shutter speed and how it's captured, but I'm gonna have to tell you about that later. It's gonna take us way off topic and I don't have the time for it. But really cool things you can do with shutter speed, okay? It's just, all right, we'll leave it at that. But shooting at shutter speed, you're gonna wanna shoot at speeds that are, and now, yeah, I'm sorry, that was a huge rabbit trail because we were talking about shutter speed. Shutter speed, when it is blurry, you're gonna wanna shut that down so that your shutter is not moving any slower than, I guess some people can shoot 1/60th of a second. I've shot about 1/60th or maybe 1/30th of a second with holding it in hand, okay? So that is hard to do. That means you have to stand securely. Your feet are firm and planted on the ground. You're not shaking. You've got a good hold on your camera that you can adjust how zoomed you are in or out, and that your lens is in focus if you have to autofocus or manual focus, or if it's autofocus that your hand is away from the focus ring. But the other part of that is that when you do press your shutter release button, that you don't shake when you press that button down, and that you're not breathing or tense shaking because you're trying not to breathe when you release your shutter. One of the things that I've learned, and this is just from my study and how I've learned people can calm themselves down and produce as little motion as possible when they're doing something like pressing a release. So as I press the release, I'm going to bring my finger down and start the autofocus, bringing the shutter button down about halfway. And then as I get focused, I'm already kind of starting to release my breath, but I'm even more so halfway down in focus for the shutter release button. I'm also down to about half of my breathing capacity. And when I'm ready, just before I release and press the shutter button so that it releases the shutter all the way down, I breathe that last little bit of air out. That way, when I do press all the way through, I've almost done this enough to where it's a habit. It's muscle memory. I don't think about, okay, my breath has just all released and now I need to press the shutter button. It's almost timed in that way so that your heart almost is in rhythm. When you breathe out all the last of the air in your lungs, your heart stops just for that moment. And that's when your finger goes snap, and your camera is nearly entirely, not that it will be or it is, because there's a certain amount of motion that goes with everything in our world, but as soon as you breathe your last, your heart has a moment stop between beats. Your finger actuates the shutter button. It's like boom, everything happens, boom, and then your heart beats again. You breathe, you take another breath. You know, it's really just kind of cool. So there's a lot of habits that can be formed. You don't have to do any of this. This is how I shoot when I want to be perfectly still. And if you want to shoot with slower shutter speeds, these are some good things for you to practice. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you again soon.